Did you know there is a small town in upstate New York that officially erased an entire week from its history and refuses to explain why? On paper, the town looks ordinary. Incorporated in the late 1800s, steady population, predictable census records, neat columns of births, marriages, and deaths. But between June 3rd and June 10th of 1937, there is nothing. No weather reports, no court filings. No school attendance logs, not even a church sermon. It's as if time itself simply stepped around the place. The gap wasn't discovered by a conspiracy theorist or a paranormal researcher. It was found by a state archivist in the early 1980s who was digitizing municipal records. She noticed the dates jumped forward by exactly 7 days, with no explanation, no notation, no missing stamp. Just a clean break. When she requested supplemental materials, newspapers, hospital ledgers, police logs, she found the same absence repeated across every institution. Curiously, surrounding towns showed no such gaps. Their records flowed normally, even referencing routine interactions with this town, mail deliveries scheduled, shipments planned, meetings proposed, then nothing. For 1 week, the town stopped interacting with the outside world, and the outside world seemed to accept it. Local newspapers from nearby counties mentioned the town only once during that period, in a brief classified notice stating that the road leading in would be temporarily inaccessible due to maintenance. No maintenance records exist, no crews were paid, no equipment was logged. What unsettled the archivist most was what came after the gap. Birth certificates resumed, but several listed mothers who had no pregnancy records before the missing week. Death certificates appeared for people whose names had never existed in the town's history prior. And school rosters showed children returning to class who had never been enrolled before, sitting at desks assigned new numbers as if space had been made for them. When the archivist contacted the town clerk, she was told the files were complete as intended. When she pressed further, she received a single sentence in writing. That period has been resolved. Resolved how, the letter did not say. Years later, residents interviewed about local history often paused when asked about the late 1930s. Some claimed their parents warned them never to talk about that week. Others said the subject simply wasn't discussed, like an old wound no one wanted reopened. And then there were those who swore they remembered things. Sirens at night, lights in the hills, the sound of bells ringing without pattern, but couldn't place those memories anywhere on a calendar. The more researchers looked, the clearer it became that something had happened, something serious enough to be erased systematically, not hidden poorly, not forgotten accidentally, removed with intention, and the question that lingered was simple and terrifying. What could happen in 7 days that made an entire town agree time itself should never acknowledge it? The first recorded attempt to investigate the missing week in person happened in 1996, when a graduate student studying historical redactions traveled to the town to interview elderly residents. She expected evasiveness. What she didn't expect was consistency. Different people, interviewed separately, described the same sensations. The air felt wrong. Radio stopped working after sunset. Animals wouldn't enter certain streets. One man recalled his father boarding up windows without explanation, hammering through the night, his hands bleeding as if speed mattered more than pain. Hospital records from the nearest county, recovered later through a Freedom of Information request, showed a sudden spike in admissions from unnamed locations during that same week. Patients arrived disoriented, dehydrated, some unable to recognize family members who came to retrieve them. Several reportedly repeated the same phrase under sedation. It didn't end when it should have. One nurse's notes, never meant for public release, described patients asking what day it was, then panicking when told. One man began screaming that the date was wrong, that it was already Thursday again, and that they had already buried her. The graduate student requested access to the town cemetery. Headstones from the era were intact, but some markers showed burial dates that did not exist. June 8, 1937, June 9, 1937, dates officially recognized everywhere else, but not in town records. When she asked about them, the groundskeeper told her those stones were placeholders, though no replacements were ever made. More disturbing were the oral histories recorded off the record. A woman in her 90s claimed she remembered the sun not rising properly one morning, hovering too low, casting shadows that stretched the wrong direction. Another recalled a town meeting held at night where everyone was told to stay inside afterward, no matter what they heard. There were also references to an outside presence. Trucks with no markings, men who didn't introduce themselves, Orders given quietly, followed without debate. Power lines inspected. Telephone exchanges disconnected. One resident remembered seeing the clock in the town square covered with canvas. When the graduate student submitted her findings, her thesis advisor warned her to change topics. Not because the research was weak, but because requests for her files had already been made by agencies she hadn't contacted. Shortly after, her university email was shut down due to a technical audit, and her notes were returned to her apartment in a box she never mailed. She left the state within the year. What remained behind were fragments, patterns, and the growing sense that whatever happened during that erased week wasn't a single event, but a progression. Something that began quietly, escalated rapidly, and ended only when someone decided the safest solution was to pretend it never occurred. And if that decision was made once, the unsettling possibility remained. What if it could be made again? In 2014, a contractor repairing fiber optic lines near the town uncovered a sealed metal container buried beneath an old municipal building. Inside were magnetic tapes labeled only with dates, June 3rd through June 10th, 1937. No agency name, no signatures. Before the tapes could be analyzed, they were collected by representatives citing hazardous materials protocol. The contractor was paid in cash and asked to sign a non-disclosure agreement that included penalties for temporal misinformation, a phrase no lawyer he consulted could clearly define. But one technician reportedly listened to a fragment before the handover. He described a low hum, like wind through wires, layered with voices speaking calmly, methodically, as if reading instructions. At one point, a voice asked for confirmation of the date. Another responded, "We are no longer using that system. The town remains on the map. People live there. Children grow up unaware that a piece of their home exists outside of time. But anomalies persist. Phone records occasionally show calls placed to numbers that were disconnected decades ago. Security cameras glitch for exactly 7 minutes every June, their timestamps looping briefly before correcting themselves. Residents still avoid the topic, not out of fear, but out of habit. As if silence itself has become part of the town's infrastructure, passed down like an unwritten law. The most haunting detail comes from the town's official motto, adopted in 1938, just 1 year after the missing week. It appears on signs, letterheads, and the welcome placard at the town limits. Forward together. No mention of remembering. No reference to the past. Because whatever happened during those 7 days wasn't just erased from records. It was removed from direction, from narrative, from cause and effect. A gap where something went wrong enough that the only solution was to step over it and keep walking. And the disturbing thought isn't that a week was lost. It's that someone decided it could be. And we never found out what made them afraid of letting time remember.